Hello and welcome to the Gold Goats and Guns podcast for January 26, 2023. My name is Tom Luongo and we have a lot to talk about. I have with me today the great pleasure of doing a home and home because I was just on her show a couple weeks ago. I just did a home and home with James Delingpole and that was fun. So we're going to do a home and home today with the great Mel K, who's had the great pleasure of being on her show, well, God knows, at least 4 or 5 times now. But it came up in our last conversation that Mel knows an awful lot about movies. And y'all know that I know, or at least think I know a lot about movies. But the fun part about this, and what we didn't know, was that Mel used to work in the belly of the beast. Mel used to be a screenwriter. And so that's awesome. And I'm like, no, you're going to be on my show. We're going to do the movie podcast that my people have been yelling at me to do for forever and a day. But it's not going to be the movie podcast I had originally sketched out and have a 3,000 word outline for that I'll never use. This one's going to be more fun. So, Mel, how are you today, love? How you been?
Oh, I'm great. I'm so excited to be on your show. I followed you way before I invited you on my show. I was so honored to have you, and it's always so much fun. And that is great because there is a lot to talk about in terms of movies, what is going on in that industry, what that industry has become, what it's about. And we're just like with everything else we talk about, geopolitics, financial, this country, something's not right in Hollywood. So what they're pumping out is something is wrong. It's all connected to the same stuff as you and I know. It's the same influences. It's coming from this top down, multiple levels of control and behavior modification. So I started out, I went to NYU for journalism, and because my parents said I had to get a real degree. And now I look back and I think I never would have made it past my first semester if it was the NYU of today. This is 20 something years
I
ago.
can't imagine.
But then so I agreed to do that, and then I worked a little bit in I was in the heyday of MTV. I worked at MTV News and a couple other places, and then I went back for film, and I specialized in screenwriting. You had to pick one: screenwriting, producing, or directing. I did screenwriting, and but I actually went towards historical drama. So I learned I took an extra few classes about not just turning books into movies, but actually going back and uncovering history and making that into movies, which kind of started my journey to where I am now. So a film I made while still in school ended up going to the festival circuit in the late 90s when there was still a festival circuit, when people went there to get discovered, not movie stars and the studios went there to promote their film, which it became. So it was a really great time in film, I believe, in that period. I ended up going to LA, and I never went back for 18 years. So I got stuck in Hotel California until finally in the late in 2014, I packed my bags and ran.
Good. Yeah, that's about the right time, because it was about that moment when everything really, I think, when the mask really came off. Because it was for years. It was funny. I'm a huge fan of the Coen brothers, and everybody who knows that knows me knows that I'm a huge fan of the Coen brothers. And I think it was right about then they put out Hail Caesar in 2015. I think it was 2015, which is an hilarious movie. If you've not seen Hail Caesar, it's hilarious because it's this beautiful homage to the 1950s. The Busby Berkeley, all the different types of movies of that there, the silly westerns, the Busby Berkeley musicals, the bedroom dramas or the parlor dramas and all of that stuff, and the communism, and how the whole subplot in that movie is about George Clooney getting kidnapped by communists who are all working on working within these movies, and it's hilarious because it is really kind of showing. It's really kind of showing Hollywood's ass that Uncle Joe McCarthy, not Stalin, Uncle Joe McCarthy wasn't wrong. He was just a drunk. And there were actual, honest to God, commies in Hollywood. And it's, the Coen brothers, played off as a joke in many ways, but at the same time, they're also quite serious about it. And they were talking about the method and the mechanism of how that was all weaved into our, and they were all proud of themselves. So and they all reminded me like Salieri from Amadeus, when he has that breakthrough moment. He does a simple plagal cadence and goes, "Oh, thank you, Lord." And, meanwhile, Mozart is, pushing out, concertos, off the top of his head. And these guys are like, "We embedded this little thing in the background of a scene somewhere. We're winning." It was hilarious when you really stop to look at it that way. That movie is hilarious from that perspective. But we're in a different state today. We're in a much, much different world. And I think somewhere around 2014, 2015 is when the culture war and the destruction of our old icons, the old idols of our generation. I don't know about you. I'm going to be 55
we're
in a
the
couple
same
weeks.
age. I mean, I'm a little younger, but not that much.
Right. So the icons of Gen X, the comic book heroes of the icons in DC, in my mind, in DC, and then of course over in Star Wars and some of the others, they all needed to be destroyed. And how were they going to destroy them? Well, this is, I think, part of my. It's something I've been pinging about, complaining about for a while now. Is I think it's been a deliberate act of vandalism. And I know what I want to know from you is like, how much did you see, or how much do you, where are we going to go from there?
Right.
So,
Well, I'll tell you, this all started way before when the people saw it. I was there. I was writing. I was lucky enough. I had a good mentor early on that said, "Do not go to Hollywood without a job. Do not go there to make it.
right.
You don't move there until you have a job," which was a saving grace for me. So I started working right away. I never, millions of people go there to be famous. It's not a real thing. It doesn't happen. That's not how it works. So I was lucky to be working from when I got there in like late 99. And what happened was, I'll tell you, I hope a lot of people that watch you probably know about Laurel Canyon and the LSD and the CIA and everything that was involved in like the 60s and 70s and Leary. It was very involved, but the CIA and mind control and propaganda was always in Hollywood. It was actually created for that, even back to Operation Paperclip. So they've always really known that their behavior control, behavior modification, subliminal, that's part of what they do. And people at the very top are very aware that they control society through movies and TV and music and all of that. Mm-hmm. But what happened was, I don't know if you recall, in the mid 90s to late 90s, there was Michael Ovitz had started CIA, the biggest agency. I'd known his son, I'd known them. And he wrote an article, or was interviewed in Vanity Fair. And it was an article where he said that the gay mafia had taken over Hollywood. And he got eviscerated. Okay. Right. And from that point on, the guys that still run CIA, which is, I believe, one of the key players in what's happened here, they got rid of him. They forced him out. He jumped around a little, but Ovitz went out there. But I'm telling you, around that time, that is when GLAAD, Black Lives Matter, which was something else at the time, that is when there is, and because of the level that I worked on, there are Satanists, straight up real Satanists that, they come from Anton LaVey, anyone can look that up, and they worship Aleister Crowley, and they happen to live in LA and work in that business and in the music business. And there's witches' covens with big celebrity actresses that you all know. It is a place of mind manipulation, but the people that are there are the most easily manipulated, because the way that they set it up is, if you make it, you make it, whatever that means, that then it becomes like you become a product, and it's very quick. And I know some real A-list actors and some people that have actually committed suicide or, drank themselves out of jobs and all of that, because you don't realize that you become a product. And once you become a product, you have handlers, you are finite, you have 10 people that your salary depends on them, and their salary depends on you. So it just became, but that whole cultural thing with, and I'm telling you, it was weird. There was like right near me, I lived in West Hollywood. There was like a whole street of like executives that were all lesbians. I mean, high level, I'm talking high level. And they were openly talking about this. At the same time, we had some of these people that are involved in the Snyderverse controversy and other things were very nefariously involved in some strange parties and crazy stuff going on. I mean, there was just what I feel like happened was the covert evil and Satanism and anti-Americanism and, color revolutionary type things that were under the surface in Hollywood from the beginning, around 2003 started to sprout wings, and it became very overt. It was covert and it became overt. And then they built the new CAA I call the Death Star. And that was that. And Hollywood was now a tool, an operator, a wag the dog. Because you brought up a lot of that, and I'll tell you something. I'll give it to you in a second. But I just saw that they said that they had to end Time's Up that they hijacked the Me Too movement and turned it into Time's Up, and that was run out of CIA by operatives, not by victims, and was a color revolution piece out of Hollywood. So it just became an operation.
Yeah, no, I've heard other stories about this, and obviously we start talking about potentially Chinese money coming into Hollywood and all of that stuff as well. And it's funny. I just think that this stuff's always been there. It's like we say, Dexter and I say all the time, it's like Comintern never ended. It just kind of, it just kept going. They just said it ended, and then it was always, and even if it's just running on autopilot, for Christ's sake, and even at a certain point, it doesn't even have to be intentional. Well, at least for years, it didn't even have to be intentional. But eventually, the goal was always to break down societal norms and the old norms, to divorce an entire generation, if not two generations of kids. It was from traditional value systems and from their family and the church and their community, and really community. It's not necessarily about church per se, where we can get into the whole idea of if you reject a religion, you're going to go out and find another one. And of course, if you reject say Christianity, for example, or Islam or Judaism or whatever, that the next one that they were on offer to you was always the state. Like, let's take away the one that sustains your local community, and let's roll your allegiance up to a larger thing. So this is why we always get this, fucking rotten nonsense about, sacrificing for the greater good and all of these and all of this stuff. I can do a 45-minute rant about fucking Star Trek and knowing full well that Roddenberry was a CIA asset and that show never should have made it past its first year, but then somehow it made it to 3 seasons. For what reason? Because we all know why it had to survive. So they can go into syndication because they needed at least 3 seasons. In those days, for people who don't know, a television show had to go at least 3 seasons in order for it to generally make its money back by going into syndication, because it couldn't be sold into syndication for anything less than X number of episodes. And it's usually 3 seasons worth of episodes. And so this is how Star Trek survived. And then, on the cheap programming, and then then they resurrect it, and then they give us the real story, which is Extra Crispy, the next generation, the original recipe and Extra Crispy. So but you can see the contrast between the overt technocratic socialism of Star Trek versus the kind of anarchic Star Wars. There is a real honest to God difference here. George Lucas and those guys were all outsiders, right? They were outside of the Hollywood system. They all, they all smoked and drank and did all the drugs you could possibly imagine, but they did it up in San Francisco, away from Hollywood. If anybody's ever watched, I don't know if you've watched any of this stuff, like the early days of American Zoetrope and all that stuff's really fascinating because they literally positioned themselves as the anti-Hollywood,
right?
And then And then there's the guy Spielberg who kind of walked the line between the two of them and kind of fucked everything up, if you want to.
Yeah, I gotta say, I've been thinking about this. I've been doing with some other filmmakers trying to talk about propaganda, and it's very strange. Steven Spielberg's a very weird character to me. Looking back on the big picture, there's multiple things about his personal life and accusations that I don't care about to get into, but I firmly believe that there's something bad there. But whatever the case may be. I don't know what your thoughts are on predictive programming in movies.
Depends. Some things yes, and some things no.
Right. So you can take so if you look it up on Wikipedia, it's a conspiracy theory. That's not true. But it is very bizarre because, we know about Kubrick and his relationships with NASA and all of that. And all these guys had all this. But it's very interesting because I was looking at some stuff about transhumanism and predictive programming and other things that happen over time. And my take on predictive programming is a lot of these guys, they know, because don't forget, DARPA has a lot to do with the entertainment business, too. And they've been very involved, especially in video games.
Yep.
And so when I look back and I'm doing this transhumanism, I'm writing about predictive programming. Was it predictive programming, or am I looking at it now and saying that? But it's
a very good question. It's a very fair question. Yeah. So,
but if you listen to you and I talk about the World Economic Forum and what Fourth Industrial Revolution and what they're talking about, Noah Harari, what he's saying, just what Harari's saying alone, and then you look at the movies AI. Ready Player One, you look at Minority Report, and you think these are all Spielberg. And then all of these things in all 3 of those movies, and then there's Transcendent that came much later that is exactly what they're talking about. And you think Spielberg back in 2001, 2004, 2011 is writing about and making movies about things that right now they're implementing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's very shocking to me. From the AI is the creepiest movie, and actually Kubrick wrote that.
Yeah,
And then
Kubrick wrote it, and he wrote it for. And so knowing Kubrick as well as I do. Kubrick was clearly trying to warn us about these people
I agree.
from the moment he started making films. I
Right.
went and rewatched The Shining the other day, and I was like, holy Christ, it's the first anti-Davos movie. Like the whole seduction of Jack Torrance in The Shining was purely we're going to soothe them with sex, with we're going to absolve with alcohol, with being a part of the in club, with absolving him for his child abuse and all of this stuff, and the weird sex with like the guy in the bear suit, like giving head to the, like, dude, that's literally what he's trying to tell you. And all these discordant images of their depravity are all right there. And the Overlook Hotel was, the destination place for all the best people, which is a phrase that some film critics on YouTube have picked up about Kubrick. It's everywhere in his films, right? And then you go into Eyes Wide Shut, and then the end of his life, and that screens for Warner Brothers. And what you know about Kubrick was that he made all of his movies after Dr. Strangelove in the dark. Like Warner Brothers, he had an ironclad contract with Warner Brothers. He got to make his movies, and he just delivered them to them. And he was the only guy in Hollywood, but he of course was in England, away from Hollywood, making these films with only 7 people on set and all the rest of it. Kubrick was this guy who was just doing his thing, and then he would deliver the final cut to the studio. And as long as it made money, they left him alone. But he crossed the line with Eyes Wide Shut. They screened it in New York.
Right.
4 days later, he was dead. The movie gets recut and then put out 4 months later.
Yeah, and it gets recut with 40 minutes cut out.
Yeah.
So also that is such a crazy story. And I don't know if people remember right after, and it must have been crazy intense on that set because, like you said, he is very tight set. Yep. Kidman and Tom Cruise were having problems in real life.
Yes.
But they're dealing with all the Rothschild stuff, and crazy, all that. And at the same time, she did an interview shortly after he died. I think you can probably find it out there, where she says he was saying that there's secret societies and that they're all a bunch of pedophiles. And she said in the interview, this is what he told me. Yeah. And you brought up Shining too. I believe that he was warning everyone. Yeah. And that he did know that.
Now, Spielberg, you brought up Spielberg, and I always invoke Minority Reports. My way of saying what they want is Minority Report, but with more Germans, right? Now, I'm also a huge Philip K. Dick fan. So, I actually like Spielberg's interpretation of Minority Report. But when you really stop to think about all of this stuff, and you think about how many of Philip K. Dick's stories, which are absolutely humanist stories, okay, they're absolutely, all of them are humanist stories. Like It's all about sin and salvation and redemption and all of those things. It's about, they may be postmodern in their conception. They may be self-aware texts in that respect. They may be he used a lot of postmodernist tropes, as does some of my other favorite writers, and I can identify them all, but did so for the purpose of telling very human stories. And in effect, guys like Philip K. Dick and Grant Morrison and Borges and others are like the anti-Sartre. They're the anti, Umberto Eco and all those French and Italian fucking Marxist assholes. And what's interesting, if you really start to think about it, who's had more work translated into bad movies than Philip K. Dick? No one. Why? Right. Because you need to subvert all of the things that he was all of the real warnings that he was putting out for everybody. And only here and there do good movies get made about his work, or even better, faithful adaptations of his work. And one I would put out there is Richard Linklater's A Scanner Darkly. Right.
Well, Richard Linklater's in a is
that a movie that Hollywood put any money behind? No. Did he have to self-finance the movie? He had to self-finance the fucking movie. Right. And even though he had Robert Downey Jr., Keanu Reeves, and Winona Ryder, and easily could have, been properly marketed, they could have easily made money on it, and they chose not to. And the movie took 3 years to complete because they couldn't get the rotoscoping done because you couldn't get the money to finish the movie.
Right. But you know what? That's the price you pay if you're a real artist. Yeah. And you don't want to listen. I'm telling you, the way that it works out there, I worked for A-list actress. She was a product. She was miserable. Her life was awful. She was treated terribly. She was a slave. and yet she'd put on the nice clothes and walk the red carpet, and her movies opened with big bucks, but her life was terrible. And some of these people say it's not worth it, and they could do their own thing, like Linkletter and other people, and their lives are much better for it, because they realized early on in their careers that, if they give up a little control, the beast will take it all.
Yes.
And then blackmail them.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. And so when you think about Spielberg and his relationship with these transhumanist or fourth industrial revolution movies, you have to think, okay, so if Kubrick writes AI and then goes out of his way to, because that's the story, listen to interviews with Jan Harlan, he'll explain the backstory of the relationship between Spielberg and Kubrick. Always plots within plots, always, IQ of 240 or whatever the hell. Best. Always got an angle on everything. Why would he go out and grab Steven Spielberg to make AI, if not to, it's almost like, I can almost make the argument that Kubrick was dangling this forbidden fruit in front of Spielberg, who couldn't say no to it, right? In order to kind of tweak Spielberg. No way anybody ever accused Stanley of this in public, but I'm like, oh, this makes a lot of sense, because, by that point, Spielberg was already compromised. His inherent boomerness was already very compromised, right? And so his best work was already behind him. Raiders of the Lost Ark, Jaws. Right. Really, Schindler's List was behind him at that point. He was done. He got his Oscar. He got his self-aggrandizement trophy from from the Amish that run the thing out there, and that's that, right? And so, because they can't help themselves, they always have to give themselves trophies. It's what this is the way this works.
But it's such a mind control thing. It's all about us. All those award shows are about, you got to go see this. Yes. We would not.
I came to the conclusion, Mel, I don't know, about 25 years ago, that they just pick the starlet du jour to give the Oscar to, even if she wasn't particularly good, just to
because they have 10 movies ready.
She was going to be the hoe. She was going to be the hoe of the town for the next 5 years, and we were going to market her. So we're going to give her an Oscar for, here's your role. That's going to give you the Oscar. It's all going to work out. Don't worry about it. It's already in the bag, and they're so Halle Berry, because Charlize Theron, this one, that one, all the way down the line. I'm not saying that they didn't do good work in the films that they won for, but it's very clear that this is the way this is supposed to work, and there's no surprises in any of this stuff. So
no,
but
you brought up something I want to also say, because you brought up Bond too, and I want people to also understand the Daniel Craig movies of Bond were, I believe, to kill Bond as to take away that man.
Oh, sure.
Man. But you brought up something about the World Economic Forum and the Klaus Schwab and all of that. And I know a lot of people didn't like the Quantum movie, but that movie is about, I think, the World Economic Forum.
Absolutely, it is. It is Quantum of Solace. And it was interesting because Paul Haggis is another one of those screenwriters that is like, no one fucks with Paul Haggis. That guy writes whatever the fuck he wants, right?
Yeah.
And because he's written unbelievable.
He runs his sets. I've been on his sets. He runs his sets like like a prison.
Right. So it's fascinating. So, the Quantum of Solace as a film was destroyed because of the writer's strike. They didn't have
exactly.
They didn't have time to finish the script properly as a proper sequel to Casino Royale. But I really look at all five of those James Bond movies. There's two things that are going on in that story. One is letting everybody know, yep, here comes the World Economic Forum. And it's interesting. I was thinking about this arc the other day about these. You give us Quantum. He undercovers Quantum. Doesn't actually destroy Quantum. Just one of the dudes in that movie. And then in the third movie, we ignore all of that, and we just get to we just have a revenge plot. Skyfall's a fine movie on its own, but it's a revenge plot against M, which is just dumb. But that's starting to introduce the idea that MI6 is an institution, and the end of the British Empire is here. So, oh, by the way, you're not going to get Brexit, FYI. And then you go to the fourth movie, Spectre, where now all of a sudden it's not Quantum anymore. It's Klaus, it's Blofeld and all that. When Spectre is literally awful.
Blofeld is Klaus Schwab, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's awful though, actually. And so you have to get away because they got too close to the truth. So now we got to give us the Bond villain. And then after Spectre is destroyed in No Time to Die, we just get the angry guy on the back end of it, the leftover piece, who just wants revenge.
Yeah.
And is willing to vandalize everything and take out the world. That's also telling us where we're going next, because that's the stage we're in now, where if they can't win, they want to take us all out with a horrible virus.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. But that's the craziest part about No Time to Die is that the weapon is a virus with nanotechnology in it that is specific to a DNA genome.
Yes.
Now, I don't know how you can see that
and not see.
Right.
Right.
And it was filmed in 2018, right before the pandemic.
But it was also supposed to come out before COVID.
Right.
And COVID wasn't supposed to happen in 2020. You know how I feel about COVID in 2020. COVID had to be brought out in 2020 because JP Morgan blew up the friggin' repo markets in 2019 by not repoing any European collateral, and the friggin' financial system was melting down, and they had to bring forward the COVID. I think this has always been my story. They had to bring everything forward at least 2 years.
Does that connect to when Larry Fink spoke in Jackson Hole and said they were going direct 6 months before the COVID pandemic hit everyone?
I think so. Yeah, I have to go back.
When I look at the timeline, I look at that speech he made, which to me means like the World Economic Forum, like like the public-private partnership and the bankers are going to just skip all governments and all constitutions and Bill of Rights and go directly for us.
Right.
I feel like that's what he was saying.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, although this year, did you see what they did? Okay, just so everybody knows that we're not like, okay, so we're like way off in La La Land, and this is hilarious, and I'm having a great time with this, and you can salt all this to taste as much as you want, everybody in the audience. But did you see who spoke about the post-country future and how corporations need to replace failing governments and all the rest of it? Who was out there except everybody's favorite African American, one of the best actors working today, and a guy I absolutely adore watching, Idris Elba, goes out there and gives you that speech. I'm like, well, I'm done. I can't watch him anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I'm done. I can't do it. At least Denzel Washington keeps his mouth shut.
Denzel's on our side.
For the most part. Yeah. Other than when he makes a movie with Spike Lee, I know.
But I think he's one of the people that stayed true to just being.
It's very clear. I think that Denzel, who, by the way, is the son of Jor-El and a brother of Kal-El.
Wow.
Well, if there was ever going to be a black Superman, I think that, Denzel's son of Jor-El, brother of Kal-El. That's a joke that we've been running with in our group for years.
Of the bigger picture here, because I think that there was a concerted effort to destroy, because I saw Broccoli, the daughter of the Eon guy.
Oh, right.
She said in an interview about about James Bond dying and all that.
Right.
She said, well, the whole archetype of the man that was James Bond has changed. So the Bond movies have to change with it. And I'm thinking, no, what has to change is men.
Right. Well, yeah, no, I agreed. What's really funny is that, I really love the Daniel Craig movies because we actually had a real James Bond, right? We had a James Bond who's, it wasn't the cartoon James Bond. It was the guy who did get hurt. His alcoholism was covering all of the past pain, and everything else is everywhere, especially in Quantum of Solace. It's really clear how much he uses alcohol as a self-medicating device for, because he doesn't actually want to feel any of the things he's feeling. I think Craig played it all brilliantly. By far, those are the best Bond food. I mean, I can barely watch any of the other Bond films because they're all just this, they're all this escapist fantasy about the primacy of MI6 and the British Empire. And I was like, you know what? I'm done with that. I had as far as I'm concerned, the Brits have given us Top Gear and Monty Python, and
I think
Top Gear and Monty Python, and
I think Ian Fleming would agree about Daniel Craig. I think that's more what he would
absolutely.
That's what he wanted.
Absolutely.
And Craig also, to me, that last movie, I thought it was a great movie, but the one thing that was very clear to me in it was that they were demasculating him. They were, it was like, and especially when they brought in, so I fully expect that it's not over, but it's going to be like.
Well, I think what they did, and I it's funny, at some point they finally had to bring Bond. The whole story, if you really look at all the relationships he has with all the women in those 5 films, I think, while I'm not crazy about Madeline as a character, she's finally good in the 5th movie. She's not particularly good in the 4th movie. It's just not well written. And Léa Seydoux does what she can with the part in Spectre, but Spectre's not a well written movie. Is at some point that man has to ultimately be tamed within the context of doing what he needs to do, which is to protect his women. And I think that we brought James Bond back from the fantasy back to where he needs to be, where, even he gets to have, or has to do, the traditional male role. He doesn't take care. He's not. Yeah. Of course, he gets to protect the world from this terrible virus and everything else, but he's doing it for all the right reasons, which is that, the woman finally shows him his greater purpose, which is the female. So in a sense, it's a really great restatement of traditional gender roles within a relationship. Yeah. And giving James Bond a daughter, I think, was actually the absolute.
I was going to say,
I think it was absolutely the best plot decision in the entire movie.
And if I was to revive the series, I would make it about, they're going to pick, if they were to pick a girl, I wouldn't go with what they were going with. I would go with her. But
I would just, that timeline's over. Just reboot Bond back to the beginning and tell another story about James Bond from the beginning to the end. I think that's what they should do from here on out. I don't think they should try and, enjoy that continuity and I certainly don't think they should gender role. They should not gender swap James Bond. If they do that, it's just a slap in the face and they'll kill it. But again, these people are not above anything because they want to destroy it all.
Well, I think that, Star Wars or not, I thought the Force is female was bad for that whole thing, that whole ad campaign. Because to me, I just thought, who cares?
Well, what's funny, I've gone down the rabbit hole on this, going through the entire series. If you assume any amount of generosity on the part of the people who worked on the sequel films, and I think they went into it honestly. Okay. I can see why they would want to gender swap the lead, the Jedi central figure, because we have a whole bunch of masculine solutions to these problems. They did not work. That makes perfect sense given where we are. And we have an animus, in a Jungian sense, an animus possessed female who really is, for all intents and purposes, other than the fact that Daisy Ridley is, fairly attractive. She's not a man in any way. She's a woman anyway. She's a man. She's a kind of classic James Cameron style, Linda Hamilton, Ripley, Sarah Connor style, dude with tits, right? And a lightsaber, and that has to be, and she has to go through the entire arc of regaining her positive femininity. And a Jungian sense. Now I'm talking purely in Jungian terms when I start breaking down the Star Wars sequels, because if you do break her down and Kylo Ren down in these terms, it works really, really well. And their integration at the end of Rise of Skywalker, even though even though Rise of Skywalker needed at least one more pass on the screenplay, Chris Terrio did what he could with the time he was given, which wasn't much. They did their best, but it wasn't a bad they ended in the right place. And
I mean, the marketing campaign that made it about woke
that's
stuff
terrible.
Was totally, I think it's bad for all of the superstars. I love Avengers. I like Guardians of the Galaxy. I like once they start with the woke stuff. Well, I mean, Avengers is basically all woke, but once they start with it in the marketing, where they're making it about that, let it be subliminal, and to the people that just want to enjoy it and see it and ignore it, like me, great. But when they start making it the entire ad campaign and all of that, because a lot of people aren't going to see it, but they're going to. Well,
the other thing is, you see, when you talk about predictive programming, I think the Marvel stories are completely cynically done. I can't see that in the Star Wars films. I see inconsistent storytelling. I see, the pressure cooker of Star Wars creating, some odd choices. Marvel, on the other hand, way too cookie cutter. Oh, the source material was always Marxist at its core in the first place.
Right.
So going back to freaking Marvel, going back to why Steve Ditko left fucking Spider-Man in 1963, for fuck's sake. I can, this shit's deep. If you want a really interesting history on comic books, there's a great book about Steve Ditko published by Hermes Press, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head now, about Steve Ditko. You look it up. It's a great book. And it'll give you a really good history of how the comics industry, developed through the 40s, the 50s, and into the early 60s, and then why Ditko made the decisions he did to leave Marvel, at the height of their popularity and where he could have been making money, and and then walked away from it all. Never made $1 off of Spider-Man after he walked away from it.
Wow.
Right. No, he was he was such a Randian asshole. He was just like, nope, I'm done. No, Steve Ditko didn't make $1 off of Spider-Man beyond the last issue that he turned into Stanley.
Wow.
Not $1.
It's shocking.
Yeah, because he's like, no, I sold it off, and that was that. But the industry, and you can see it all was already there. And it parallels a lot of the stuff that was going on in the film industry as well. So, but the Marvel films are all predictive programming. Like Thanos rides with Davos, for fuck's sake. It's not
right.
We're all Malthusians, and we need to kill off half of you. And all we need to do now is spend 6 hours trying to humanize Thanos by giving him daughters that he cares about and is going to cry over when he sacrifices them on the altar of his fucking stupidity. I'm like, really? Okay, cry more, fucking Ozymandias. Like, we're still gonna, nothing ever ends, and we're still gonna knock you out. We're still gonna take you out in the end.
Right, but you and I see that, but I can, because I see it, I can ignore it, and I can just like take it for what it is.
Oh, I couldn't ignore it. I
don't see it, and they don't the masses don't.
Yeah, no, it was funny.
They're programmed.
When I got to the end of Infinity War or whatever and I heard that Thanos's big plan was to kill off half of humanity because reasons, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? I got to go. I went 14 movies to get to this
for the Club of Rome.
Yeah, not just for the Club of Rome. I was just like, this is just bad. Regardless, I mean, if you're going to do the Club of Rome thing, you didn't need to go 14 fucking movies to get here. You could have done this in the Act 2 of Iron Man 1, and we could have get it over and done with. This is supposed to be a side note in a like. Come on, even the guys that the Coen brothers were making fun of in Hail Caesar understood that this is subtext, not the text.
Right? Exactly. Yeah, like we're gonna sneak it in. But here's another thing that I wanted to know if you thought about. So I once interviewed a long time ago at this company, Participant Media, run by Jeff Skoll. Okay. And I have to tell you, I walked out of there like I could never work here because it's just I would never make it in the company. But he's also a partner of the World Economic Forum. He's also a very invested in the green stuff and the transhuman, the whole thing, and a big giant billionaire donor to a lot of things that align with the World Economic Forum. Now he's produced both Inconvenient Truths, obviously. Now these are documentaries and they're meant to make people crazy, I think, and manipulate people. Now the scary part about him, and he did he did a movie, Deepwater Horizon, where oil was the. I mean, this guy's a straight up he's working with the World Economic Forum. Right. So the two Inconvenient Truths. Then he did Deepwater Horizon, which is the oil is the demon. Yep. It's not that it was an accident. Right. It's like in that movie, the oil is the villain.
Yes.
And then, but here's the crazy part. He did a movie called Contagion, and it is exactly what happened to us, right?
Yep.
So from the beginning to the end. The crazy part about that is it was trending on Netflix in the top 5 movies during the first 2 weeks of the lockdown. Wow. And that's when I say, okay, now you're overplaying your hand here. Right. But there are those guys that really are connected with the Great Reset and the World Economic Forum that make movies and documentaries to do this. Right. And it's not predictive programming. It's literally like, this is what we're going to do.
Right. This is just straight up propaganda. This is not art. This is just straight up what we're going to. No. So what's interesting, I think just thinking back to Spielberg, right? Spielberg, I remember watching, I always movies that I like, I try to buy on the physical copies of, simply because one, I don't trust Amazon's not going to edit them or, take them away from me, take my digital rights away from me. And also because I also like, I like the process. So I like the behind the scenes materials as much as anything else. And I don't buy all
commentary.
Yeah, all the commentaries and all that stuff, right?
That.
So yeah, of course. And so even if it's a movie that I've seen 12 times, if I can go, I'll every once in a while I'll go to my local pawn shop. I'll go through the Blu-ray bins and go, oh, cool. For $3, I can watch 3 hours worth of back, behind the scenes material on whatever this is, right?
That's how I
discovered. Honestly, that's how I discovered Man of Steel, and then it's like Man of Steel. Oh my God, that movie's so fucking great. But going back to Spielberg, watching Minority Report, he was talking then. He's like, when we decided to sit down and do the pre-production work for The World, we went to all the best futurists So
Oh,
all the best people to get their view on what the world will look like in 25 or 30 years. We wanted to get real world ideas about what the technology would look like just over the horizon in the future. I'm like, oh, look, Stephen went to the World Economic Forum literally and got all of their technology. So when I invoke Minority Report, I'm doing it very purposefully because it literally is all right there, because the people that get interviewed in that, all that back material is all right there. They're the ones who are doing all this futurist nonsense. It's all right there. And so, and you can see it, like the advertising that follows you around, the little bit, the eye implants, to this, so that, all that stuff, the underclass of those who wouldn't get the chip, so they have to live underground, and like it's all right there. And we don't need any guns because, well, we have AI. I mean,
crime doesn't happen.
We have AI. I mean, precogs to get rid of all the crime. Philip K. Dick in the original Minority Report story, that was a cautionary tale. And a proper cautionary tale. One of the few stories of his, though, absolutely, that ends, interestingly enough, on a very cold note. Because the system this is one of the rare instances where, because it's this, Dick played fast and loose in his short fiction as opposed to his novels about this stuff, where it ends with the Minority Report validating that the system was still working properly. And Anderton is absolved, but the system continues, which was actually chilling because, right? And that was the twist, because that was the twist. But it's one of the rare instances where Phil didn't, because he just took an unflinching view of the stuff, no different than the end of A Scanner Darkly when we find out that the drug war is just one more big government program.
Right. Exactly.
Right. So like, it's crazy, like, and you're.
And that's another thing, like what you're just talking about with the drug war is some of these films that depict the CIA are literally telling us I just saw a bunch lately because I'm working on this propaganda thing. So there was like Charlie Wilson's War, where they're basically telling us what happened in Afghanistan and the CIA was involved. Right. Then Good Shepherd, another one. And then a movie I love, Air America, where they're telling us exactly what they did and that it's us.
Yeah.
And they're, and I know that they.
Sicario. Have you seen Sicario?
Oh God, yeah. And Argo too.
Yeah, and Argo. Yeah. No.
So they're telling us, and then God forbid you or I or somebody says like, no, we've been doing this stuff for decades. And they'll say, why are you saying that about America? And
why are you peddling conspiracy theories? We're not. It's like right there. Like, we got to do. Like, do you think we can? You do a Google search? I mean, I know we're not millennials and we're a little old, but we do know how to put stuff into Google and get stuff out of it. Like,
but the CIA has to be allowing them to do the. Of course, they really. Yeah. So the question is, why do they allow that? Is it? Are they changing small things in it? Are they giving you when I see any of these movies?
Well, no, you got to give people escape valves and make them think they're smart and informed. And then what it does, this is one of the arguments against the Coen brothers' treatment of communism and Hail Caesar that I ran into. I showed the movie to my partner Dexter White, and he got actually really angry because he could see the counter programming of turning them into buffoons. Right. Okay. And now it's like, well, look at what, and I like, well, okay, fair enough. I'm like, but I'm not doing that here. This is just the Coen brothers having fun doing what they do while also layering in a very, very strong story about faith in ourselves. I mean, dude, two Jews made a movie about how great about how great Christianity is. It's like I got news for you that it's doing something slightly different, unless you think that they did it wrong. So it's like I don't know. It's like, it's very interesting. You can always read these things on different levels if you're not careful about it. But good art shouldn't ever really tip its hand. You should be able to, it's a good work of art. When you can interpret it from both sides of the situation. It's not propaganda. Like the Marvel films are straight up propaganda. Star Trek was straight up fucking propaganda, without a doubt. Right? Inconvenient Truth, not a documentary, propaganda. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, we can go through so many of these movies, but your best artists, and this is where I get down to people like Rian Johnson and I think and Snyder, Nolan. There's a few people who understand how to play the game and tell great stories and still give the studios what they think they want. Oh, well, Chris Nolan's going to give us our big sci-fi epic about time travel or about, quantum mechanics and the quantum universe. all because of climate change destroyed the earth. They stopped listening to Nolan's pitch at the moment of Nolan, Matthew McConaughey. This is Interstellar. Nolan, Matthew McConaughey, a dying earth because of climate change, goes to try and save the future. They didn't hear one more word after that. They're like,
and these guys know that.
$200 million. What's your budget? You need 200 million. Go have fun.
Oh, but you know what? I have to tell you, pitching a project is a performance. These guys don't just walk in there. They know exactly what they're doing. And the crazy part is when you were talking about being a screenwriter, I'm a screenwriter. I have to tell you that a lot of these screenwriters, especially like Zach Penn and Aaron Sorkin, some of these, they have projects mapped out for 10 years that they can't write. So when people think like, well, I'm going to break into screenwriting or I'm going to get out there, that's why I do believe that right now, especially because of the backlash over the wokeness, over what's happened in Hollywood, a lot of the backlash of what happened with Epstein and Weinstein and all of this, there is a alternate Hollywood being built.
Yes.
And I know that right now, and it's being built and it's being financed, and there's very A-list people that would never tell anyone that they're involved. And I mean, like when I say A-list, which sounds so stupid, but I mean like big, huge movie stars and big giant producers that are behind the scenes want nothing to do with Hollywood anymore. And they've been working this entire lockdown on alternate ways to do this and moving studios to Nashville and to Austin and to just getting out of the entire Hollywood model. Because like you said, the CCP put in a lot of money 15 years ago, but what people don't know is the CCP took out a lot of money about 4 years ago.
Right.
So, you know, we have a situation where even you have Quentin Tarantino out there saying he can't raise money. You know, it's not an accident. Or
that's okay, because that guy needs to stop making movies because he. I'm done. I'm like, after what I found out what he did to Uma Thurman on the set of Kill Bill, I'm like, no. I'm sorry. No, you're just. He's such a disgusting human being. Like, I'm sorry. I don't care. Libel me all you want, Quentin. I've heard the stories, and maybe they're not true, but I don't give a shit. Like, I'm not watching your movies anymore, especially after making 3 movies in a row where you're trying to tell me that the U.S. Southerners in the Civil War were the equivalent of Nazi Germany. Yeah, you need to go fuck. You need to go fuck right off with that shit. I'm done.
He's in
like,
the cold.
He did it.
Totally blackmailed.
Inglourious Basterds was the last good movie that man made, and that's the way it is. And because he made a movie about the greatness and the power of making movies, which was always was always the thing that Tarantino was working towards, and he did it. And then he doesn't need to make any more movies. I'd almost be fascinated to see how he would destroy Star Trek, but that's just because I hate Star Trek so fucking much. So it's funny. But one of the things so. What's interesting, I think, about what you're saying is about the new Hollywood being built is that when you look, we have production tools at our disposal today that you don't need millions of dollars to make a movie. Right. You don't need, what you need is a good script. Go back to the Kevin Smith model of you work the freaking script until it's perfect. And it doesn't matter if you have good actors. It doesn't matter if you know how to operate a camera. It doesn't matter if you made the mistake of shooting on 16 because it was too expensive. But all this stuff, I'm like, doesn't matter if you got a good script, it will work. And Clerks is a perfect example of that. And if you have a bad script, it won't work. And then you've got the Jay and Silent Bob reboot, or you got Tusk, or some of his later movies where he went complete shitlip. The point being is that today, like in the music industry, what you need now is talent and a story to tell. Right. And then you can get your story told, and there's 100 outlets for you to get that story in front of eyeballs.
Yeah. And I love being on a set. That's my favorite thing. I've been on like 20 movie sets in my life. And I'll tell you right now, I was nervous. A lot of people were nervous. I finished studying when we were still using Avid and 35. Right. And, and it was like, and then within like 2 years of me moving to LA, that was when Lucas put out the Sony camera that totally copied film. Yep. And then Final Cut replaced basically, or it replaced Avid. And I'm thinking, and it took me 22 years to pay off my student loans to learn how to do something that was obsolete 2 years into my career. But I will tell you, so I went back and I was talking to one of my professors, and I was like lamenting it with another friend, like we got totally screwed. And he was like, no, the one thing you're missing is you can't replace talent.
Yes.
You can't, talent will never, ever, talent is the commodity.
Yes.
He's like, it doesn't matter. All the digital, now they're going to have AIs writing scripts. It doesn't matter. he was like, just focus on your craft and your talent and keep pushing, because nothing replaces it. Nothing. And it turned out at 20 years later, I believe that 100%.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, and I don't even begrudge guys who have politics that are different than mine if they tell good stories.
Right.
Like, I know for a fact that it's very obvious Rian Johnson and I would not see eye to eye about anything, almost nearly anything about modern American politics, but the guy makes great movies.
Yeah.
And he tells great stories. And he tells, more often than not, tells the right story. I mean, go look at the construction of things like Knives Out and Glass Onion and, you know, Looper, and I could just go through them all. Those are, if you want a master class in modern screenwriting from a young filmmaker, go there, because there are very few that are doing it that well. And I mean, there are very few perfect screenplays in this world. Blade Runner happens to be one of them. So is Unforgiven. You know, he's got a couple, and a couple of the Coen brothers, Miller's Crossing, and a couple of the Miller the Coen brothers films are really close to it as well.
Yeah, but
there are
we
many.
have to also this dumbing down of our society and our children and everything is dumbing down the effort it takes to get to the level to be able to do that. That takes decades of honing your craft.
It does.
And that they've all done that. And it's I say this about acting too. People say, oh, I could act. No, you don't. No, you can't. You don't know what it takes to do 8 takes of the exact same shot, of the exact same emotions, of the exact same movement at the exact same time. It takes decades. You know, you can get lucky as a kid, but I'm talking about the ones that go into their 60s.
Or 100 if you're working with Kubrick, and then he wants something, and it's like, what do you want, Stanley? I don't know, but you haven't given it to me yet.
Right.
Go again. Let's go again. And literally, that's what he would do. He's like, no, that's not right. Yeah. I don't know what it is, but that's not right.
I was on a set where De Niro literally, there was 30 takes. I'm not kidding. And it was like, everyone was like, ugh, again? And you're like, well, he's a star, and that's what she wants. Well, you know,
it's like it's got to be good. It's got to be right. Like it's a very, very unforgiving medium. Like film is a very unforgiving medium, and that's just the way it is. And, you know, like, again, it is, you know, it's good. This is excellence is something you strive for in this life. And, you know, it is, you're not every, you know, we can't always like film them live like the Marx Brothers did. And then when the joke falls flat, look at the screen like Groucho Marx did in Duck Soup. I think it was Duck Soup. And went, look, they can't all be good. And then, you know, turn a complete mistake into one of the funniest lines in film history. They can't all be good. And, you know, but then they went on. And, yeah, genius. Right.
It's genius for you.
It is genius. Well, that was the Marx. I should have mailed it to the Marx Brothers. And I go, oh my God, I can. No, that's again another one of those. Like, you know, you're talking about one of the a great screenplay, and the Spielberg film is the third Indiana Jones movie. And like, how did Spielberg, you know, right? How did Spielberg direct that movie? And, you know, it's all Jeffrey Bohm. Jeffrey Bohm was a screenwriter, and it was a great story. So I don't know.
Well, like you said, and a lot of people don't know, and it's sad because a lot of screenwriters will never get their due. And then if you work on a TV show, there's 7 writers and only 1 gets the credit.
Yes,
and it's usually the low guy that like, you know, really toiled away in the middle of the night that never gets any. But writing is the key. If the script's not good, you have no shot.
No, you have no story. It's like, you know, and so it's very important. Like, people ask me all the time, like how do you figure out, you know, what to watch? And I'm like, I'm really, really, really discerning. Like, I sit there. I'm one of those guys. I sit with Camille, my wife, and I sit there going, okay, what are we going to watch tonight? 25 minutes later, I'm still doing that.
Same with us.
I'm terrible because I'm looking. I'm like, oh, well, that. And then I like start checking directors, and I start checking writers, and I start like, I'm looking for something, because I'm always like, okay, well, if it was written by this guy, I'll watch it, even if it's like, if it was written by that guy. I knew it invoked Aaron Sorkin earlier, and I'm like, fuck him. I can get good dialogue from 100 different people. I don't need to listen to that fucking guy. As good as his dialogue is, and it's excellent, I don't need to listen to a goddamn thing that son of a bitch has to say. Same thing. And if Akiva Goldsman's name is on the movie anywhere, nope, that's a pass. Like, I've just got certain things. Like, I still have PTSD from watching the 3rd Batman movie with Nicole Kidman and Val Kilmer. I'm like, oh my God, that was the worst screenplay of all time. Never again. And like, that guy, no, and doesn't matter, you know. And he's won Oscars for.
I have a list. Like, no. Yeah, well, I'm telling you, the whole awards thing is it's just not real.
So it's funny. I don't know, Mel. But yeah, I think that for a lot of people, I think one of the takeaways here is that I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Like, don't get mad at Disney when they put out a movie that panders to Marxists. Marxists like movies too. They happen to like shitty movies, but they like movies too. Praise them when they put out a great movie. When Pixar puts out a great movie like Soul or Inside Out or The Incredibles or whatever, don't get mad at them when they put out Finding Dory. Like, it's just that simple. Like, because at times, like, it is what it is. Like, it's not all about you. We're all a little too gaslit on this stuff. And I think it's kind of important for us to say, we like that, we don't like that. And you can see it in the box office receipts, and you can see it in the way people are getting angry with being pandered to. And I think it's a very important thing that we separate those things, and we separate that process and still enjoy the process of ingesting stories, because stories are important, because that's how we as a society deal with our stress and talk and communicate to each other.
Yeah, and I think more and more we have to start also realizing that we have to decentralize everything, including art and entertainment and
Absolutely.
making movies. And the more we do, I think the better the quality will be of the projects, because like you're saying, some of these guys that you're talking about that make these, $100 million budget movies, once they're in, and they have to deliver what they have to deliver. But if you brought some of these people out of the system, and you got, because it doesn't cost $100 million, it doesn't cost $20 million to make a movie, and especially of these ones with CGI. I mean, it doesn't. But you take them out of Hollywood, you take them out of the model, you take them out of that thing, you put them in somewhere like, you take
them out of the creative accounting. It's I think there's so much of it is just the creative accounting of how they can lose money.
Or a lot of it is money laundering.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I was getting at. And and CGI,
the more money doesn't make the better movie. I've seen many movies fail because their budgets are too high, in my opinion. Of course,
I've seen many a movie with amazing CGI for almost nothing. Again, it all depends on what you're looking for, and it all depends on what if you're willing to work with, a story that's good, that's well acted, well conceived. You don't need, you can forgive some post-production issues here or there. Like if it's well written, it's when it becomes when you go off the rails and the writing starts to fall apart. Well, that's when you got to vote with your time and your dollars and be done with it and move on. So, yeah.
Wow. That was fun.
Was it? Cool. If you have anything else you want to talk about, you want to let us let out the door with?
No, I just want to say, if anyone wants to follow me, go to themelkshow.com. All my links are there. And my hub is Rumble. So the Mel K Show over there. And Tom, I'll hopefully have you back soon to talk about, the geopolitical planet chaos happenings. And thank you so much. I love talking film. If you have another topic, I'll come back anytime.
Oh, absolutely. I always wanted, this is a way by tying into the culture war, this is a way I can keep it on brand. And then I can have my cake and eat it too. Because, I like cake. All right. So, all right, Mel, thanks, love. It was lovely talking to you. We'll talk again soon.
See you next time. Thank you, buddy.
Bye-bye. Well, that'll about wrap it up for episode 129 of the Gold Goats and Guns podcast. I really hope you enjoyed Mel and I going through the nuts and bolts of what it means to construct a story and construct a movie in many ways, because really, as Scott Adams said, there's, one movie, two screens and all that kind of happy jazz about perspective, but it really is a very difficult minefield to navigate, and understanding how the narratives are constructed around us and then how they interface with our daily lives. And frankly, these people need better fucking screenwriters. It's just that simple, because the shit that they're putting in front of us right now is pretty freaking weak. So that's a good thing, because at this point, if they've destroyed the ability of their writers to write anything even remotely convincing, then we know that we are on the right path towards getting out of this mess. So with that said, I'm going to let you go. You guys be well. You take care. We'll talk soon. Hey. Keep your stick on the ice.